happening? All right. Hi, everyone. Hopefully, this is starting to stream to YouTube. I'm on here 5 minutes early to do the usual technical setup, check everything is working. So, looks like we are live. Fantastic. So, if you are here already, please drop us a note in the chat. Tell us where you're tuning in from, why you're learning Portuguese, all that good stuff. And we will be getting started in 5 minutes. Hi everyone. Let's get started. It is bang on 2 o'clock. And you know me, I'm punctual. I love to get started on time. So thank you so much for joining me for this live stream. I can see lots of you already. We had such an amazing response to the last student interview that I did. Saying lots of you wrote in saying how inspirational it was and how it had really inspired you with your Portuguese. So we're here today to do it all again with somebody new. So we're going to talk all about this student's journey, how she got started, where she is now, and how she got there, because we really do want to inspire as many of you guys as possible to take the leap and start learning Portuguese, because once you get on the other side of that fear, it really is such a magical and awesome thing to be able to do, and it really does make a difference to your day-to-day life here, as you're going to find out shortly when we go ahead and chat to my students. So if you are tuning in, you do probably already know who I am, but just in case you don't, my name is Liz and I host the YouTube channel Talk the Streets that teaches practical Portuguese in plain English. And I also created the Portuguese Pro program, which is an online course and community that will take you from saying your very first words up to having your first conversations with native speakers. And that is how I met Barbara, another amazing student that I can't wait for you to meet. So I'm going to go ahead and add her to the stream so we can hear her story. Hi, Barbara.
Hi, Liz. How are you?
Oh, it's so good to see you. Okay, so thank you so much for agreeing to do this and sharing your truly heartwarming story. I'm really excited for everybody to hear it. But let's start at the beginning. Could you tell us a little bit about who you are and why you decided to learn Portuguese?
Well, my name's Barbara and I'm living in central Portugal in a place called Ansião. It's a small town. It's about, it's in between Lisbon and Porto, and it's about an hour and a half from Porto and 2 hours from Lisbon. We decided to, had been expat for about the last 35 years, and so lived in cities most of our lives. And so we decided to, we wanted to buy a place or like in rural Portugal to retire to. And so we were living in Baku at the time in Azerbaijan, and so living in a flat 11th floor apartment, and sort of like wanted to have a different type of lifestyle. And then we actually stumbled across the house here, so we came to have a look and we fell in love with it, because we're actually in the Escampados, which is on the outskirts of Ansião. So our house is right on the forest, so it's about a walk to go into town. So it's it's quite easy, and so it's all very rural area here, so it's like farming land, but we're quite central as well as such, sort of like to all the amenities, so it sort of suited us sort of like really well. Yeah, we've been here. Oh, sorry. No, it's been about, we bought the house about 6-7 years ago, but we used to come over just sort of like for maybe 2-3 times a year, sort of like for a couple of weeks. We didn't really, because we're actually on the forest and we had to sort of like maintain the land quite a lot because of all the risk of the forest fires, etc. We seem to spend most of our time in the garden, sort of like trees and everything. So we've got like fruit trees, olive trees, and the grapevines, etc. here. And so we didn't really mix too much with the locals, apart from going to the supermarkets or whatever. So yeah, it was about 1.5 years, I suppose, when we actually moved here full time. And it was just when we actually sort of like, moved over here for that. So yeah, so it's lovely, living the dream, as they say.
Absolutely. I'm sure there are so many people out there who are dreaming of that exact life, right? You talk about living on the edge of the forest, having land, having trees to maintain. I think especially when people, are thinking about another stage of life, that's certainly a big dream that people have. So you're already living the dream. That's awesome. And I know the area quite well that you're talking about. It really is beautiful. So in terms of moving to Portugal then, so full-time back in December 2021, how was your Portuguese at that time? What level were you at, and how did you feel about the prospect of learning?
Well, I thought I was very good because I was learning when I was actually in Baku. And I was, when I started, I suppose I've actually started maybe about 4 years ago to actually try and learn, sort of, because we thought, okay, we're going to be moving over here. Because where we lived overseas, and it's always been sort of like working before, we always had someone either in the office or around who could translate for us. So it was never really a high priority, as awful as it sounds, but it was something that there was always someone we could fall back on. But then we thought, right, if we're living over here on our own as sort of being retired, it was going to be, we've got to stand up for ourselves. So I thought, right, okay, I need to sort of learn it. But of course there wasn't really the resources around then. It was a lot for the Brazilian Portuguese, but not the European. And so I think I started off with a couple which were more like the audio ones, and so you just had to listen to it, and that didn't really work for me. And I like to be able to sort of like hear it, speak it, see it type thing. And also with I then tried an online video one, which was okay, you didn't as such have the interaction with people, and then that was okay because it was more sort of like the written work, and I could actually go through the coursework itself. But it was supposedly where you could actually then send through emails if you wanted to get any feedback, and I did that a couple of times with the questions, and I didn't get anything back. So carried on my own, and I thought I was sort of like doing okay. But then when I actually came here and then tried it out, and no one really understood, and it was like,
oh no,
confidence goes down, and you think, well, perhaps I don't speak it, and so it was. So I knew a bit, but I didn't really know what to do with it, if you like. I had sort of the resources there, but didn't know what to do with it. But so it was a bit going out, and you're not understood.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people end up in that boat where they think, okay, well, how hard can it be? I'm going to try a few things. And then when you actually, like you say, try it out and you just get blank faces back for you, that's what starts what I kind of call like a vicious cycle, because you have your confidence knocked, so then you don't want to try. And so then you're sort of in this kind of negative loop, which is, as we'll go on to talk about, was what we were able to manage to turn around working together. But yeah, that's a very common story. So you joined us back in last summer then. You joined the Portuguese program last summer. So what was different about that, and what was this breakthrough that meant you could finally start to be understood by people?
Well, it was actually learning how to pronounce everything correctly, because that was never really.
You have to start.
Well, that was never really drummed in. You think, oh yeah, and a lot of it's just listen to it and you can do it sort of parrot fashion, but it's not. But where you're drilling into us that you need to sort of like how to pronounce everything. Then that's what really clicked, because then when I would go out with my little script, I knew what I was wanting to say, and so I'd write it down and I'd read it out, and I was actually then reading it and people were responding to me. It was like, oh, they understand me. And then I had the difficulty, I couldn't quite understand what they were saying back to me, so I'm like, oh, hold on a minute.
Challenge, yeah.
But yeah, that then in itself, it boosts your confidence, because you're thinking, oh, I'm actually getting it right. And you could tell that they were very responsive. I mean, the Portuguese are so friendly and so patient and so kind anyway. The fact that I was, even before when they didn't really understand what I was saying, they were so nice about it. It's like, well, at least you're trying. But with this, they could actually understand it. And it just gives you then that confidence that boosts you up that, yes, I can do it. I'm not too old to learn this, because it used to be, oh, I'm just not linguistic, I couldn't do it. So you sort of think you prepare yourself for failure even before you start. But it was but yeah, so it was really from that, and then sort of having the feedback as well from yourselves, from your live sessions and the Q&As, that as well, because you're then able to, obviously when we submitted the pronunciation workshop ones, it was a case that I could then get your feedback, and then you're hearing how it should be said, and then that repetition, because the times I used to practice it, I must have practiced like 20 odd times before I actually submitted something. So it was a case you're doing that repetition, and it's something, it does work if you've got to put the effort in, but that's when you do get your results from it. But yeah, amazing. That itself.
So yeah, I'm so glad that you said pronunciation, because I'm sure there are lots of you out there who are watching who think, well, yeah, I have done courses and read books and I've tried to speak, but nobody understands me. The reason for this is probably that your pronunciation isn't where it needs to be, and which is why people aren't understanding you. So this is why I always say, before we even think about grammar, before we worry too much about the listening side, we have to get the pronunciation right, so that you can actually be understood by people, right? So that's a really, really great start, because you told me right at the beginning that you actually dreaded bumping into your neighbours. Is that true?
Oh gosh, yes. It was okay, because we used to, because it's so friendly here, and it'd be like, because you're in the country, they've got all the time in the world, it seems to be. But it's just a case of that. It to start off with, when you're young, sort of like, oh, ¿cómo estás? And then nothing else would come out, or
Yeah,
it'd be
kind of stuck in that sort of
yeah,
pleasantries,
that's
and that's
right.
it.
So sometimes you can ask how someone is and what the weather's like, type thing, how it is. But again, it was because I was, before we started to interact with people, then we were able to, I was doing your course. So I would then, I was then practicing as such, sort of like on them. And so it was, it's awful to say that you dread sort of doing that, but then again, it was the confidence thing, and you should,
Yeah.
because it was so nice, I thought, no, I want to actually as learn it more, so I can actually sort of speak to them. And it was it did actually, it comes with time, but again, the more you put into it, and again, the more you're actually speaking to them, and then you're hearing how they do pronounce certain things, or with there, because obviously slightly different accents, etc. here. But it was but yeah, it was the, I say, like when we actually came here full time, then you haven't really got any excuse not to sort of speak to people. Then they're obviously say, oh yes, and telling them that we were here for good now. It's not just coming on holiday.
Yeah.
And they'd come round with the freshly baked bread, or it would be, the eggs fresh with the wine and things like that. And it would be, and you're feeling, you get stunted from like, so you think, right, no, that was it. I thought, right, now I've got to get myself together and actually, sort of like learn it, so I can actually speak it more, and sort of like, to be able to converse with them more.
Yeah, and also the confidence piece is really important. So as I was talking a minute ago about that negative loop that you get yourself into when things are going wrong, you can put yourself into a positive loop when you actually do make progress by testing it out and then having a good response from people. And then that inspires you to keep trying more, because the confidence and the mindset piece is also a really, really important part of this. That's very important in the beginning. So I think that that's really, really important to bring up. So what's it like now with your neighbours? So you're past the point where you would dread bumping into them, because all you could say was hola, bon dia. Tell us what it's like now, spending time with your neighbours, who you've befriended, what kind of things you get up to together.
Well, it's my new bestie, Celia. She's wonderful, because we've got 3 main neighbours as such close by, and she's got 2 children. She lives with her father. He's in his 80s, and bless him, Francisco, he's lovely, because he's the one who makes the wine. He's got the adega at the end of the track.
Amazing. You know, the local winemaker. You're smart.
The first time we encountered him, it was like, come in for the wine, and they say no Portuguese, but it didn't really matter then, because after a couple of glasses of wine, he was just wanted to talk. And it wasn't until after maybe 2 or 3 years later that I realised, because he's mid-80s now, but he was. I was used to speak to him, and he'd look, and I think, no, he's not understanding me. But then I found out that he's actually quite deaf. So it was, I thought, I used that as the excuse, and that's why he couldn't understand me, because he couldn't hear me. But yeah, with Celia, when we first arrived, as I say, it was the 21st of December. So Celia actually came round on Christmas Eve with a plate full of some warm bread and the sonhos, the Christmas dessert that they have. And it was, so we'd only been here like 3 days as such. So I rummaged in the cupboard and got some Frere Rocher, I think it was, I had there, sort of. Well, I'm prepared. And then sort of like since then, it's been, they're always sort of like leaving whatever vegetables or fruits in the season. We had kilos and kilos of potatoes and oranges and the lettuce and whatever come through. But as we've now, I've got more confident with my Portuguese.
Yeah.
Now she invites me in for a coffee. She's in the potato shed, because that's right next door to our house. Here, a rummage around, and it's like, well, Celia, get him cafe, what's that? And then she comes in on the veranda and have a coffee, and then she toddles off again. It started off where it may be like just literally have the coffee and then sort of go. Obviously, communicated in between time, but it's got longer periods that she actually stays for.
Yeah.
And whenever we sort of pop by, we have Maria and Alfredo who are on the corner, and he's away a lot, so we sort of see her and she may pop in or come in, sort of for a coffee. And even yesterday, I actually had lunch with George, who's got a farm at the bottom of our garden, who's got a lot of the orange trees.
Mm-hmm.
So he actually helped us get an IBC, the water tank, yesterday. So he went down because he's got a truck and we picked
Oh,
it up.
very useful. Those things can be so difficult to do by yourself if you don't have a
Oh,
local
yes. So,
understand how to do all of these things. So he's been helping you with practical
yeah,
stuff as well.
that's right. And what possessed me to say, queremos going out to conosco, have to stay for lunch, and so at 3 hours here with us, well, including sort of, but and so like none of them speaking any English, and you think if for them it must be hard as well. Like for me to start off with, it was you're thinking, you're not being able to understand as such what they're saying, but I'm trying to speak their language, and it must be quite difficult for them if it's not quite right. So for them to stay that amount of time and want to spend time with you, I think, well, it can't be that bad. So that's my
and
myself.
it also makes it so much nicer for them as well, because at the end of the day you are immediate neighbours, so we all know what a difference it makes to day-to-day life to actually get on with your day-to-day neighbours. And I know that when people move to rural areas in Portugal, this is something that is kind of daunting and scary, because you think, oh, maybe we're going to be completely isolated, which is, as you mentioned at the beginning, it did feel a bit like that. But now, having people befriending the winemaker, having people over for 3-hour lunches, that's, that sounds great to me. We've got a couple of pictures so that we can show. So this is you and Celia, and this, I think, was her birthday. What was going on here? This looks like great fun. Tell us what's happening.
Oh, yes. This was actually this Easter. It was at Easter Sunday.
Oh, cool. Okay.
She invited us round for lunch. She came round the day before, and she said, but she just said, it's do it for Easter, sort of Easter Sunday. And so and we felt quite honoured, actually, because obviously they go to the local chapel, and they're quite religious. So to invite us in and to include us in the party, it was lovely. And then we suddenly saw the balloons up and sort of like, the anniversario, and I'm thinking, oh, whose birthday is it then? And it was like Celia's birthday.
Oh, wonderful. It looks like such a good celebration. Lots of food, the whole family around, and some music, it looks like, as well.
Oh, yes, because her son plays the accordion, and that's the local bread man as well, Dave, who actually plays the accordion. All the events, they are there at, sort of like, they do that sort of like all the traditional music as well. And all the parties we've been to there, there's always the music and the sing along and everything. And it's her family. It's always has been the same family members that we've met, because there's 5 of them living in the house. Here, her uncle's there as well, and but all the other family members are close by. Well, most of them, should I say, because she has some overseas. But so there must be usually about 20 people there, and we've got to know now different members of the family, like her uncles, aunties, and lots of cousins, what have you. And it seems to be like each time we go, I get to know one of them a little bit more, and of course they're all local, a lot of them locals. So when we see them, now have to spend more time when we're in the local town, stopping and saying hello to everyone, not just the neighbours.
Fantastic. That's so cool. Well, listen, if you've just tuned in, I know that we've got people coming in and out. I'm here with my student Barbara, who is sharing her experience of learning Portuguese to give you guys the confidence to do the same. She went from speaking no Portuguese when she arrived back in 2021 to, as she's been telling us now, befriending the whole village, going on the weekly rambles, making friends with all the neighbours. So if this is something that you want to do as well, you just need to go to talkthestreets.com/apply to see if you qualify for an application call with my team, and hopefully you can come and join us inside the program. We do have a little bit of a wait list at the moment, but we are getting through all the applications as fast as we can. So if this sounds good and it sounds like you want to have this same experience as Barbara, being invited in and having 3-hour lunches with the neighbours, then we would absolutely love to hear from you. So Barbara, you've been telling us you've gone from this place where you knew absolutely nothing to really a place where you really feel like you're integrating into the community and taking part in village activities. I loved the story that you shared about Christmas. So you shared this in the community. So for those of you who don't know, it's not just a course. We do have a big community as well, where people are always sharing their stories, they're sharing questions, they're sharing resources. It's really, really fun. And I loved it when Barbara shared about Christmas, because the first time you literally moved a few days before Christmas, and as you said, you didn't have anything to give the neighbours when they turned up. But the second Christmas, so this Christmas just gone, when you'd been learning your Portuguese, you prepared a bit better. Tell us what happened on your second Christmas.
Well, I made them eat my food. I actually made some mince pies. So I thought they always give, or Celia always gives, sort of like the traditional Portuguese foods to us. So I thought, well, I'll sort of like actually make some mince pies, so I can actually take them round to her and to Maria and Alfredo. And so we went around there again on Christmas Eve, as it was, and she was in her kitchen cooking, doing everything, because you can do about 10 things at once, whatever. And then it didn't matter, someone just dropped in unannounced, you know.
Yeah, that's great. The Portuguese love that.
I know, but no, have a coffee. And I'm like, no, you're busy. And it's like, no problem. And so and we like gave her the mince pies, and she then, I say, we stayed for about, I think it was about half an hour with her and her son. And so then we in return got the homemade sausages, and then the homemade sonios again, and the wine, and some more fresh bread. And then we thought, right, okay, we're going to see our other neighbour, to Maria and Alfredo. And again, it was they weren't prepared, but no, come in, and yes, okay. And we couldn't have coffee, it had to be wine with them. But it was and sit and talking, and then they took us into the garden, and we come back with the cabbages, oranges, lemons, little chocolates, and a shushu, shayota, I think that's a plant as well, which is growing in the garden. I'm pleased to say I didn't. But it was, and we were there for about an hour and a half, and it's just so, and I think, God, what a difference from last sort of Christmas Eve, when I was probably cowering behind the door, sort of like, please don't knock on the door and to come in, whatever. And then I was throwing myself out there to them.
Proud of you. I'm so proud of you, because this is really what it's all about. I always say it's not about, getting 100% on a test or anything like that. It's about the fact that instead of staying behind your closed door of your house, you are going out into the community, and they're coming to you, and it's just such a much richer experience. So I am super proud of you. I loved that story. I can just imagine you all there at Christmas time. So now the real breakthrough in the Portuguese Pro program is that you have been doing lots of conversation practice with Celia when you've been having your coffee dates. But the final kind of milestone that we have for the students in the Portuguese Pro program is to submit a 10-minute recording with a native speaker, just having a normal conversation. So that's how we would consider you graduated, because you've proved that you can actually speak, you can survive. The conversation won't be perfect, but because we're trying to get to this A2 level, we really want to see that you're actually able to survive in this type of kind of environment. So you managed that, and we're going to have a listen to the little clip. But tell me how it felt. Did it feel like hard work? Did it feel like fun? Did you imagine you'd be able to do this when you got started?
No, it was because, I mean, I feel I was lucky actually that I was able to do it with Celia, because it was going to be with Maria to start off with, and then she couldn't make it. So because they're, I say different type of people, there was sort of different things I wouldn't talk about, because I knew, I sort of like know Celia so well. It was just so easy, and sort of like, it was fun, like you were saying. It was just like inviting her around for a coffee and a pastel. And, she ended up staying for about an hour and a half afterwards anyway, sort of like from that. And it was like, she thought it was a bit strange to start off with, because when I hadn't really prepared her for it, and I had to say, do you mind if I record us talking?
You're like, what? Why do
It's like, well, okay, if you really want to. And then, and then afterwards it was, but yeah, it was, I wouldn't have thought that I would actually get that far. Because, okay, I don't understand everything that's being said, but it doesn't matter. And it's something that, the more we're having the conversations, then the more I am picking up and learning. And there's still a lot, but you're learning as you're going along. And that's oh, it's not holding me back, whereas before it possibly would have done. But it's just something like that, and it's definitely, the more you practice it, the more you're speaking it and listening, then you know, the more you're going to pick it up. But yeah, it was good fun, actually. Bless her, she's lovely.
Good. Well, listen, we're going to take a little listen of a clip from your challenge. So I'm going to go ahead and share this video file. You were talking about your garden.
Oh,
yes. Tan yung plástico sobre os legumes. Alface y cebolla, alho francés, couve-flor y brócolis y un poco coentros que já tem uma estufa também. En rúcula.
Rúcula, sí, que é uma salada.
Yeah, sí, yeah. But não sei, é uma primeira vez para de plantamos só.
Amazing work. How do I get rid of this now? I don't remember. Remove from stream. There we go. So you were able to bond over what you've got growing in the garden. That's fantastic. How does it feel when you listen back to that and see how far you've come with your Portuguese?
It's amazing. I still cringe sometimes when it was, especially because there's a lot of like the giggling. Oh, you know, like this, and like seeing, but no, it's quite good when you do listen back, because then you can sort of try and correct yourself as well. But yeah, I must admit, I do feel quite proud that I can actually. Yeah, and it's nice that, because they are so encouraging. Anyway, the Portuguese, I mean, I don't think, I've never met a non-friendly Portuguese, but they're so generous with their time as well. And it's, I don't know whether it's because we are in the country, but even when we've gone into Lisbon and Porto and, you know, it's everyone the same generally. They're so friendly, and there's nothing to be scared of with them. You know, it's something that give it a go, and then they're just sort of like really appreciative that you're actually wanting to sort of like, you know, to speak the language to them. But
yeah, and by not learning the language, you're missing out on meeting these people.
Oh gosh, yes. Yeah, yes, it is so true. Thank you.
You're welcome. So yeah, just a reminder for anybody who is listening who thinks, God, I wish I could do what Barbara has done. I think that you can. Just go to talkthestreets.com/apply, where you'll find the application form to join the Portuguese Pro program. We would absolutely love to have you and help you do what Barbara has done. Before we run out of time, Barbara, can you tell us any advice you would have for those people who are watching right now thinking, I'm not good at languages, I'm too old, it worked for her, but it won't work for me? What would you say to those people?
I think, well, once you've mastered the pronunciation, and then just keep at it and keep on sort of like, in the more that you actually speak it, the easier it does become. It's hard work. You've got to put the effort in, obviously, sort of to do it, but you get so much more out of it from doing it. And it's, but say the pronunciation and then speak it, because, okay, I didn't feel, when it was like forgetting the speaking partner, I was thinking, right, okay, you need to do it so sort of like with the same person, you sort of like, you know, sort of like every week, whatever. But I suppose because I was doing it with different people, it didn't feel like I was doing the practice. It was, but I was obviously inadvertently.
Because Portugal was your classroom. That's the best way to do it. We want people to actually go out, speak to real people, and so that is just as good a way of doing it as
you do have to. But it does help if you can actually sort of speak it, because you're listening to it, and then the more you're actually picking up what is being said to you, and it is something, then you're understanding it. Because every time when I go out, I recognize that word, and then you're and it just adds sort of what you're building up your vocabulary, and it's sort of like what your knowledge of it as well. But just got to put the hours in. But it's, you know, it's not difficult to do that as such, isn't it? So you get so much.
Enjoyed it.
exactly.
Because it was enjoyable, and you were always such a diligent student as well at the pronunciation workshop. So again, for those who don't know, once a week we have a pronunciation workshop that's live with me, where I will give feedback on people's pronunciations, and Barbara would always bring snippets from the local newspaper, and every week just got better and better. But that's another really good tip, that you really do get out of this what you put in. So if you do want to see this type of progress, putting in the reps, just like you would do at the gym, right? Going back and doing things again and again is really what is going to help. We had a couple of questions come in through Instagram as well. One of them was asking, how do I not get discouraged when I'm listening and I don't understand? What would your advice be for that? Because it happens to everybody.
Yeah. Well, I think it's okay, because everyone's accent's different anyway, so you don't always understand the people that you're actually talking to, and it's the same with us anyway, even whether you can speak the language or not. But I think that you just need to sort of keep at it, and like don't and say, like, try and sort of keep it at your level, that you're doing. Okay, it's different. You are actually going out to speak to me, but don't sort of like be discouraged with it, because you aren't. I don't understand, sort of everything that was being spoken to me. And when I think about my neighbour Francisco, who he was deaf as well, and doesn't discourage him from talking to me, right, and he understand me type of thing. I'm sure he can't as well as his daughter can, but it's something that that just it's easy to, if you think, oh no, they're not really, and it depends on the people you're speaking to as well. But you just have to sort of like to keep working at it, and the more you do, the more you will understand. It's going to be hard. It's always hard to start off with anything anyway, isn't it? But
yeah, I think that's a really good point, and I would add to that we have this concept in language learning called comprehensible input, where we always need to be listening to something that is just one level above where we're at right now. So one of the reasons why beginners especially have a hard time with listening is because they're listening for something that's like 4 or 5 levels above what they're able to understand. So that's why, with the dialogues and the listening material that we have inside the course, it's suitable for beginners, but there's just that little extra push that they need to be able to kind of stretch themselves for. So whatever you're listening to, aim to understand like 60 to 70% of it, and then that final 30% is your kind of stretch zone, and that's very normal. So I would just say as well, it's about experimenting with different materials and finding the right ones for you. Well, that is all we've got time for, but thank you so much for joining me, Barbara. It was so fun to get to hear your story again. It's one of my favorites, and I know that you will have inspired a lot of people today to do this. So if you do want to be able to speak Portuguese like Barbara has done, get around, make friends, be invited to birthdays, get free wine, then please go to talkthestreets.com/apply, and we would love to receive your application and help you out. And I will see you at the next live session, Barbara. But thank you so much for joining us, and I'll see you.
Thank you so much. It's really good. Really good. Thank you so much. Okay, bye.
Bye. Ciao, ciao.